and I'm co-host tonight along with Brad Fogg. While we were preparing for this evening, we drew the names of those who will be going in the order as follows. We have Ann Gass going first, Mike Johnson going second, and Krista Chappell going third. We know that there are several others who, in fact, are running for office but are not here tonight, but out of courtesy, we are going to name them. Sam Pfeifle, Michael Bailey, Adam Wilkinson, and Jim Manzer. Again, we thank you. Brad, any opening comments?
Well, I want to thank the town of Gray for sponsoring tonight's forum, giving the candidates the opportunity to use the public access television channel, which they can do later on if they so wish. Other than that, I look for a constructive conversation from all our candidates. And again, welcome. For those running for town council, and again, for those for the water district and the school board who are not here tonight, thank you for participating in town government as a whole. So without further ado, each candidate will be asked a question. They have up to 3 minutes to answer that question. We'll try to avoid any rebuttal or conversations or debate. Give the best answer you can to the question, and we'll let the voters decide. So Mitch, without further ado.
Thank you. We have pre-selected questions as well as questions that have come from the citizenry. Starting again in the order, the question is, why do you feel you are qualified for the elective office you are seeking? And first up will be Ann, followed by Michael, and then Krista.
I'm going to apologize first because I'm just getting over a cold and sometimes I start coughing. So it's not COVID. I've been tested many times. But I have lived in Gray for 35 years. It'll be 36, I think, this December. And I've been involved with the town pretty much the entire time that I've lived here. I've done all kinds of things. This is my 4th year on the council. I've served on the school board. I have served on the board of the Gray Community Endowment, and I started and chaired the Gray Bike Ped Committee for about 6 or 7 years, and that was behind the Village Area Loop Trail. So I have a lot of experience. I absolutely love living in Gray. I love serving the town in this capacity. I've really enjoyed my time on the council, and I feel like we've been quite productive given the challenges that we were working through during, especially when I first got on the council. It was just before COVID. So I'm really excited at where we are now, and looking forward to being involved with it going forward.
Thank you, Ann. Michael?
Thank you. My name is Mike Johnson. I have been living in Gray since 2005. I've been coming to Gray since 1977 when my parents first bought a camp up on Little Sebago Lake, and it was really expensive, $25,000 for 4 acres, 2 beaches, and an island. I'm just waiting for those prices to drop back down there. Since I moved to Gray, I have 3 children, 3 boys, Hunter, Matthew, and Noah, who 2 went to Gray up until 8th grade and then went to Cheverus. And then my youngest, who is a junior here in Gray now. Since moving here, I've always been part of the community. I volunteered in the classroom for over 12 years. Every Friday, I would go into the classroom. I was a scout leader for, 14 years maybe. Ran the Scouts for a few years. I was on the Little League. I coached. I think I coached every single sport that there was. The reason I feel I could be qualified, I'm not saying I am qualified, is was the president. I just stepped down of my alumni association. I have a couple hundred members, and I managed a budget there. And I'm currently I'm the president of the Mountain View Road Association, where I've been the president for over 10 years now. I've worked with the town quite a bit with not just with the road, but with other projects as well. We were able to get the town to help us to build the girls softball dugouts here. I was involved with that. I was involved with getting the town to swap land with us down by the lake, Mountain View Road. And, hopefully I can add a different view and give a different perspective.
Thank you, Mike. Krista, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks everyone, the town and members here for hosting this candidate forum. I think it's really informative. My name's Krista Chappell. I'm just finishing my first term on council. I've been on for 3 years, running for the one-year seat that's open. I've served as both chair this year and vice chair the year prior. I've lived in Gray for almost 14 years. I have 2 small children in the school district, my daughter Cecilia, my son Ellis. I have, before becoming a parent, I had a professional background in nonprofit, both in the nonprofit and corporate sectors with community engagement, project management, and strategic planning. Since my daughter was born, I've primarily been a stay-at-home parent, but I've also made it a point to stay actively involved in some professional capacities, but also as a volunteer, because I think it's important to be engaged in the community you live in. I've served on the May Meadow Woods Homeowners Association for about 4 years now. I also was chair of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. That wrapped up in 2020 and was adopted overwhelmingly by voters during that election. And I've also been really involved in my children's schools, volunteering in the classroom, and their extracurricular activities. So I hope to continue my position here on the council. I think we've done a lot of really good work in the last 3 years. There's still a lot to do, particularly around the village, and also just the town in general, and I'd like to keep pursuing that opportunity.
Thank you, Krista. As a reminder, now we're going into some of the heavy questions. You'll have 2 minutes, and about 20 seconds before the end of that 2 minutes, Mrs. Berkowitz will be holding up a small little sign that says 20 seconds or your mic is cut. If you would, please.
As soon as he said heavy, I thought he was referring to his co-moderator. Our next question, and we'll be starting with, the order will be Mike, Krista, and Ann. In your opinion, what are the 3 most pressing issues you think are facing the town over the next 3 to 5 years, and what solutions do you have to address those issues? Again, starting with Mike.
Well, I think we've got a few pressing issues. Obviously, we've had some finance problems with some fraud, and we need to nip that in the bud and figure that out quickly and make sure that we have segregation of duties and that, we're making sure that it doesn't happen again. There are lots of ways to do that through automation, coming up with different types of roles, which I think, working with the town finance director and the manager can be resolved. I think the second thing is that I don't think we have enough revenue coming into this town through homeowners. We need more business revenue. And I think there's lots of ways to create revenue, but I think that we need to seriously take a look if we want to do things with the center of Gray and grow the town, then we need to figure out a way of how to get more revenue into this town without putting it on the backs of the homeowners. Those are really the 2 big things. I would love to see, the town flourish and grow, but we also need to figure out how to pay for it. And I think I'd really like to spend some time personally digging into the finances and seeing where we could, either cut or get revenue to come in to help pay for either economic development or something like that.
Thank you. Krista?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Mike. I certainly recognize that finances have been tricky situation here in town, and we are getting a handle on that, especially with our new town manager. Aside from that, which is certainly not unimportant, I do feel like the big three issues that the town faces in the next few years would be building out infrastructure that actually supports the type of business that Mike's referencing. Right now, the village cannot support the type of infrastructure that will generate the kinds of revenue that will really relieve individual taxpayers. So creating that infrastructure through unique funding sources like federal grant funds and state revenue state grant funds and other opportunities to find unique funding sources, and then getting that infrastructure in place, in particular in the village where where we've designated density growth, really is an important goal in the next 5 to 10 years, so that we can encourage businesses to find Gray attractive and want to relocate here. The second thing I would say is important is affordability, and what I mean by that is both taxes for individuals, but also just general finding a house that is affordable. I think that's an issue statewide, and it's really going to take a regional approach to address a lot of the affordability for housing. And then third, I would say healthy community engagement, particularly volunteers, but also an environment that creates a livable community for folks where they want to come and be involved in the town.
Thank you. Yeah.
I swear I didn't talk to Krista about this in advance. I also think that the village is a really important, is really important to Gray's future. I've been trying to revitalize the village for over 30 years now, and it's not been easy. And I think that the tendency has been to expect that business, commercial property owners and businesses will come in and kind of do that work for us, and that's never worked. Obviously, it's been 35 years since I've lived here, and we've seen very little of that until, and somewhat recently we are seeing some improvements. But I think that it's a public-private partnership. I mean, the town has to step up and do some stuff. And so the Village Transformation Project is something that I've been working on since I got back on the council a year ago, and I've been sort of serving as the interim project manager in a way to keep it going until we can hire a staff person to really manage that better than I can. And I'm excited that's going really well. We're moving toward applying in partnership with the Maine Department of Transportation for a $30 million U.S. Department of Transportation grant that, is one of the ways that we're going to make sure that the cost of it doesn't fall just to taxpayers. So that's an important thing, and that will support future economic development. Housing is a big concern of mine. It has been for me professionally throughout my career, especially affordable housing. And then I would also agree that community engagement, for me, it's trying to make sure that folks understand what's going on in town and how to find out more about it and feel welcome in town hall and at all of our meetings. And so that's a constant struggle these days.
Thank you.
Our next question: what steps will you take to ensure transparency and accountability in your role? Up first will be Mike.
Krista?
Sorry. Had a sequence.
Certainly, transparency is important, but as Ann just referenced, getting people engaged is the first step, and that's always been a struggle. I think people will lead really busy lives, and we can encourage people to come here and engage with us at our meetings, but sometimes they just don't come. So we need to find unique ways to continue to get the message out about budget issues and events happening in town and things that might be relevant to people's lives. The council in the last couple years has proactively been mailing information to folks ahead of budget season, and also to encourage folks to come to meetings. There is a cost in that, but I think it outweighs the benefit outweighs the cost, in that people are getting things in their mail directly so that they can see them. We have an email listserv people are welcome to sign up for. We post informational flyers around town. We have active social media, which staff has expanded on in recent years. And we have forums like GCTV. Also, people are welcome to come and make comments and ask questions. All the documents we deal with are publicly available. People can look at them online. If they have questions or concerns, they certainly can raise them. As I said, transparency can be hard if people aren't feeling engaged because they're busy, but it's certainly an important aspect that we try our best to keep on top of.
Thank you. Anne, if you would, please.
Yeah, I always like to hear from people. I don't care, from what part of the political spectrum they come. I'm always happy to hear from them. And I don't take it personally. If they're angry about something or, and really want to vent, that's perfectly all right. We're all on Team Gray. I think we all try to, are trying to make things better in the town. And so people are welcome to call me anytime. My phone numbers are on the town website. And when people call me, if I tell them, I listen, and then if I tell them I'm going to get back to them, like if I have to look into something, I get back to them. If they have to leave a message, I get back to them within 24 hours unless I'm out of town. I have a Facebook page for my council work, and I post on that from time to time. And then just, as Krista said, all of the everything in that the council does is public. If there are going to be more than 2 council members at a meeting, then it has to be publicly noticed. As we have to do a notice that lets people know that it's in effect, a council meeting. So, and we observe all those. It's not like mistakes are never made, but I think we've gotten pretty good at all that kind of stuff. So, I feel quite good about the transparency and accountability these days.
Thank you, Ann. Next up will be Mike Johnson, followed by Jim Manzer.
That's the part. You can read my writing. So as far as transparency goes, I honestly think that it starts from the top down, right? So, we need to have open communication. There are some things that you honestly can't tell everybody about when it comes to HR issues and things like that. And, we all need to respect certain situations and understand that. But I think that there shouldn't be anything in the town that not only is not discussed, but, is not shared with people that can be shared. I feel like some people feel like that hasn't happened in the past. And I'm not sure why, if that's reality or perception. I really don't know, because I haven't been in this position yet. As far as I'm concerned, I'm an open book. I'll tell you my opinion whether you like it or not, but I'm not here to do what I want. I'm here to do, what the town people want. Some are gonna agree, some aren't gonna agree at times. I can only do what I feel the majority wants and what's best for the town. And I just need to be open and honest with people. Most people know me. My wife hates when she goes to the grocery store with me because I'm usually 2 hours in there because I sit and talk, and I'm willing to take phone calls. And if you do leave me a message, if I don't get right back to you, there's usually a reason why, but I will respond to you. And I'm just I'm hoping that we can do the best job that we can as a council and give you the best answers that are out there. I think that sometimes it's a lack of communication that feels like it isn't transparent, and I think that we just need to be able to figure out a way to communicate what's going on with everybody that's out there. Thank you.
Jim, we're going to try to bring you up to speed, if that's all right. You'll have 3 opportunities to get you up to speed. The first one is, why do you feel you were qualified for the elected office that you were seeking? And please tell us what that elected office is.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jim Manzer. I'm running for school board for re-election, actually. I was appointed 3 years ago, and then was elected 2 years ago to serve out the remainder of the 3-year term. And I'm currently on the curriculum committee and the facilities committee. I'm a licensed professional engineer in mechanical and civil engineering. I also have a degree in surveying and an MBA, so I think I check a lot of educational boxes. Education is very important to me. That's why I went on the school board to begin with. I think that I've run across a lot of young engineers through my time. I'm 60 years old. That they seemed to be not quite up to the position, the educational position that I was expecting. So that's why I came on the school board. I'm a pretty well-rounded person. I've been in Maine for all my life, except for 5 years when I was an aerospace engineer in Connecticut. Grew up in Old Town. My grandfather bought the property in Gray 80 years ago, so I'm very familiar with this town. So that's why I think I'm a capable person on the school board.
Okay. The second question, in your opinion, what are the 3 most pressing issues facing your chosen public office over the next 3 to 5 years, and what solutions do you have to address those?
Well, I think the Gray New Gloucester school system does a good job, first and foremost. Let me get that out there. I think we've got a lot of very good people, but unfortunately, we've got we're saddled with a very poor system that's been foisted upon us by state and to some extent federal requirements and mandates, which makes it difficult for our teachers to have autonomy to do the work that they need to do, and a lot of things are foisted upon them, mandates and whatnot, which unfortunately, as a board, we can't really do very much about. So I think that makes it very important to take care of the things that you can take care of. The thing that concerns me the most is that there's very little attendance at school board meetings, which gives the people at the board, who are all very fine people, a sense that everybody's agrees with what they're doing, and that's really may not be the case. Gray is a fairly 50-50 kind of a community, but that's really not represented in the school board, which I find that not very conducive to good discussions when there isn't a lot of people with varying views and diversity of views, which so that's a concern of mine. I'd like to see a little bit better balance on the school board so we can have so that the people can see a thorough discussion of a matter and not just any questions and then 11 people raise their hands.
And the last question, to bring you up to speed, what steps will you take to ensure transparency and accountability in your role?
Well, I think the board deliberations themselves are quite transparent. Like I said, I wish they were more transparent. I wish there were people in the audience. Who's watching online, I don't know. Occasionally I'll get a text or an email or whatnot. And I think where the transparency needs to improve in my mind is in the development of what goes on the agenda, in the interplay between the school board chairman and the superintendent. So I think there's a lot of information that we as regular board members don't see, and that's a concern of mine. I'd like to see that improved. I have respect for both of those gentlemen, so it's not a personal thing. I just think the school board members at large need to have a little bit more information as to what goes on behind the scenes before we sit down for that meeting on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I thought the meeting was at 6:30. I'm sorry about that.
Well, better education might.
Hey, I got a job on the West Coast I'm working with. Everybody's late.
Our next question, and we will actually start the round with Jim.
Okay.
To fit him in properly. How do you as a candidate or as an elected official measure the success of your initiatives or policies?
Well, being an engineer, I'm very much a numbers person. I'm always looking at ratios and changes from year to year or from after a certain initiative has been taken into place. That's been one of my frustrations with the educational establishment, the education industrial complex, is that they make it very difficult to do apples and apples comparisons of, okay, how are our students doing now compared to how they were doing 5 years ago. It's very, very tough to glean that information because they change the standards that they use, they change the tests that they use, so it makes it very difficult to hold people accountable for the success or failure of certain initiatives. So that's a concern of mine that I would like to see, now that I've been there for 3 years, and I'd like to be able to follow it through and say, because I think Gray has done a good job. They recently were renamed 6th on the U.S. News and World Report system, or survey rather, and the woman that put that information together deserves a lot of credit. She's the high school principal, and it was a matter of, in years past, they didn't get a good, they were always complaining that they didn't get a good rating, but they didn't really take the initiative to give the people that doing the rating the best data that they could. And she took the bull by the horns and did that. And even though really we didn't really change anything, it wasn't like a new initiative took place and wow, we went from 15 to 16. No, we basically just said let's give them the best data that we have and see where things fly. So that was good in that respect. But we need to hold our state educational system feet to the fire on getting consistent standards and staying with them.
Thank you very much. Ann, please.
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting question, and just from the standpoint of the council covers a lot of ground, but there's a lot of stuff that we're working on. I'm sure the same is true of the school board. For myself, for the Village Transformation Project, that's just like one initiative. It's whether we apply for the grant and whether we get funded. I mean, those will be big external, objective measures of our work. And then, how we implement the grant in partnership with the Maine Department of Transportation. But I think, what sort of an interesting thought is some sort of creating some kind of dashboard to measure things over time. And so it could be things like, the mill rate, and we do keep an eye on the mill rate, I would say, as we go through the budget process, as well as, just whether or not we're paving roads and how much money is in our capital improvement fund. I mean, the town has sort of waxed and waned on things like that over the years, and we've been really trying to do catch up over the last several years to get more roads paved because people expect something from their tax dollars, and they should. So there's just a lot of different ways to do that, but I think that just trying to use some of those external measures, like whether or not we get funded on grants, how much money we bring into the town that doesn't end up coming out of taxpayers' pockets in order to accomplish some of our goals, those kinds of things.
Thank you. Mike, we're playing a little bones here, but...
No, good, thanks. So I guess how I measure success personally is, am I proud of the town that I live in? Am I, when somebody asks where I live, am I proud to say that I'm from Gray? And that has everything to do, like Ann said, with, the roads. Do the roads look good? When you come into the center of Gray, does the town look appealing? Is the school somewhere where we want families to move to? So I think personally, part of the success is of the policies. Are we doing what we need for the town, and am I actually proud of it? The other thing is have we been able to keep the taxes reasonable? There's going to be growth. There's always going to be growth, but can we keep it at a reasonable growth? Growing at 10%, 15% every year is not sustainable. We have a lot of initiatives that we want to do, and I need to make sure that when we do these initiatives that we can afford to fund them and that we can pay for them. And I think that's one of the biggest complaints that I've heard is everyone's worried about our growth and how much we're going to pay in taxes. And then the last thing is, are we a good shepherd for our town people? Are we doing what they want? And we're going to get that through feedback. And I think we'll know fairly quickly if we're doing what they want, because again, we're not always going to make everybody happy, but if we can get a good sense of how most people feel, I think that will tell us where we're at.
Thank you. Krista?
Yeah, I guess I would agree with what most people have said so far. I certainly agree keeping the mill rate stable and keeping taxes growing at an affordable rate, because the town is growing, so as are the services we offer, so there is going to be some costs associated with those. But if we do it in a responsible manner and a rate that is reflective of inflation and all the factors around us that influence that, then I think that's a measure of success. Also, I would agree with the fact that do I like living here? Is it a town I want to live in? I think if we're hearing that, not just my personal feelings, but if we're hearing that from our community members that we engage with, that they like what's going on, they like what they're seeing, they like living here, then I think that's a positive that we can measure. And then I guess I would add, beyond what's already been said, I think having staff that like to work in Gray and feel like they're accomplishing their day-to-day goals, but also feel challenged professionally and respected in their roles, I think that would be a measurable success here as a counselor in particular.
Thank you. Next up, question number 5. A little lead-in. This is a citizen's question. The Gray, Maine Wikipedia pages indicates in part the following, and I quote, "Being in the vicinity, these towns are in GNG. There has been ever-increasing suburban development since the early 90s. Subdivisions and commercial developments have been built at an ever-increasing frequency, leading to the possibility of Gray being swallowed up into the surrounding urban and suburban areas in the future. These developments have drawn much protest from residents, many of whom live on the same property as their ancestors many generations ago. As a community leader, what are your thoughts about the growth in the town? Can Gray responsibly promote any growth that would help increase and stabilize the tax base, yet still maintain the old-school New England charm that many in the community have desired?" And James?
Well, I don't think it's in Gray's best interest to try to keep up with the neighbors. I came from the northern part of the state, Old Town. It's considered north by the East standards down here. And I worked with some people that were coming down to this area to work in Portland, and I said, I think you'd be comfortable in Gray because it's not like some of these. I can't use the term that I used to describe it. Other towns, but it was a person that's a true Mainer can feel comfortable in Gray, whereas maybe a true Mainer doesn't feel so comfortable in Falmouth. You know what I'm saying? Just to pick them out as an example. I think Gray is a very genuine Maine community, and those communities are. I've been around this area since the 70s, and it's changed. This area has changed a lot. It's a lot more like northern Massachusetts than it was in 1970. And I'm not saying we want to just be a stick in the mud, stay static, but just to try to keep up with the Cumberlands and the Falmouths and the Yarmouths is not. That's not the way to go. I think we need to keep the charm. Gray's always been a crossroads, even back in the 30s. It's always been a crossroads and a bedroom community. I wish we had a little bit better tax base. It seems to be very heavily residential. Wish that was improved. But I don't think getting a big box store here is something that we really need to go. I live in East Gray. I can go to Yarmouth or I can go to North Wyndham. I don't really have, or down into Falmouth. I don't really think we need to bring one here. I've got nothing against big box places per se, but I think we've got a unique position because one of the reasons why I came down here is because of Gray's unique geography. I mean, that I wanted to run my grandfather's house, but
20 seconds.
yeah, is that we're so close to community distance to Lewiston, Auburn, Portland, South Portland, and Brunswick, and that we need to capitalize on that and not just trying to replicate our neighbors.
Thank you. Michael, if you have any thoughts on the matter.
I always have thoughts. So, I think there's some really interesting opportunities. I think a few years ago, we didn't allow a 55-plus community to come in here, which was a real shame because a 55-plus community gives you the tax revenue without having to pay for the schools. So I think, if we can promote, I think as Scarborough, Osako just did a huge development with 55-plus. That would be one opportunity that I'd be pushing. There's going to be developments going in because unfortunately some of the older town people own a lot of the land and they're looking to get rid of the land, and who's looking to buy it? Developers. So, it's a tough call. Do we need to grow? We're gonna grow a little bit. I don't necessarily want box stores, but I definitely want businesses to come in here. I think we need to give some incentives for businesses to come in here to, we have no restaurants in this town. We have nothing really to do in this town, and it's okay to go somewhere else, to go to Home Depot, but there's no reason why we can't offer facilities here as well. And I think that we need to look at, again, I'm repeating the same thing, other revenues coming in. You're going to get some communities, you're going to get some growth, but let's also try to balance it by getting some revenue on the other side as well as you do that.
Thank you. Krista, you're up.
Okay, great. So I would agree. I don't want to see big box stores here. I served on the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, and we were very cognizant of the fact that the residents of Gray embrace our rural character and village charm here in particular. I don't think anyone, and me in particular, wants to negate any of that. But at the same time, we are smack dab in the middle of Portland and the Lewiston Auburn communities. And there's a tremendous amount of pressure to grow here in Gray. And there's an influx of subdivisions being built. And I think if we can support the infrastructure in the village, it will also result in the types of business Mike was just referencing, like restaurants and small scale businesses, service industry type businesses in the village here, because the more people we have, the more we need those types of services to support the community. I am not against people moving here. I think it's reflective of the need. The people need places to live. People need housing to be built. I moved here 14 years ago, and at the time, it was a very affordable community, and to be frank, my family and I could not afford to live here at our current prices. And if you don't increase supply of housing, you're not going to decrease the cost. So I think what we need to do is focus where those types of houses and buildings are being built. We've identified places in the community that would be more appropriate for that type of building, particularly in the village and the more what we're calling transition areas along major corridors in town. And
20 seconds.
Yeah, if we focus that development in the right places and we build out the infrastructure in a responsible manner, we can increase affordability and also the diversity of business here in town.
Thank you. Ann, if you would.
Yeah, in the 1990s, the State Planning Office had a kind of a mantra that said, Maine is changing, get involved, because all over Maine there was sprawl happening, and it was happening in southern Maine, definitely. And it took a while to kind of catch up to Gray, but we're seeing it now. Chris is absolutely right. And in it, it's a tension because, you may not want to see a subdivision in your back, the field behind your house that you don't own and your neighbor does. But if you owned that field, you would not want your rights circumscribed if you decided you wanted to develop that property, right? So, I mean, there's that balance. So the comprehensive plan was a really thorough and lengthy process that was used to help direct growth to different parts of town, the village certainly, but in some other areas, and then in an attempt to keep some parts of town more rural. But, I think Krista's absolutely right. I mean, we have to have more housing. And you can draw a direct line from all the communities in southern Maine, certainly, that have refused to allow rental housing or mobile home parks or manufactured housing, or have really limited its use to homelessness and the rise in homelessness all over the state because people can't afford housing. And obviously there are other issues like substance use disorder and things like that, and mental health, but affordability of housing is a huge issue. So
20 seconds.
We have to accommodate more growth, and it's not going to be possible to just pull up the drawbridge and say to people you can't develop your land.
Thank you. We want to thank Andrew Reddy from Gray for that question.
Yeah, great.
Brad?
Our next question is, and if I don't screw up the order, it would be Krista, Ann, Mike, and Jim. But our next question is also a citizen submitted question. On different occasions, it's been a concern in town that controlling our spending is sometimes a burden on the town and on the taxpayers. Would you necessarily, and if necessary, support continued approvals of LD1? And would you please explain why you might continue to support LD1 when spending, again, seems to be barreling out of control? And we're going to start with Krista.
LD1 is certainly a tricky wicket. I don't even know what the proper term would be. I don't know if all of you know, but that was recently repealed by the legislature. So we won't face that question going forward as a town. But the thought behind it is that the spending in town and any tax increases we see need to be reflective of the income growth at the state level and also our valuations here in town. I certainly support that idea. I don't think we should be growing at a rate that is above people's ability to pay and the valuations that reflect that affordability. But at the same time, we don't control things like inflationary pressure and the costs of services and goods. But we can certainly do our best to balance the needs of the community and the services they're requesting with the affordability and the cost that's associated to taxpayers as a result. That can be tricky, and times like last year when we were seeing 9% inflation with things, our budget reflected those cost increases, and we were still being asked to provide services that the town needs, like plowing roads and paving them and childcare and all the things that people become accustomed to seeing from the town. So yeah, there's sometimes difficult conversations involved with that, and we just do our best to balance them based on need.
Thank you. Ann?
Yeah, I actually was personally very opposed to LD1 and led the fight against it to repeal it. I thought it was a well-intentioned law that just in practice didn't work well. It was especially burdensome to Gray because of the way that we asked voters to be involved in approving the budget. It worked well for, frankly, in my talks with other towns, there are a lot of towns that just ignored it. And there are towns that have the council just approve the budget, weren't really affected by it. But Gray was uniquely burdened by it, but that doesn't mean that we can't, police ourselves. Plus, it was a state mandate, and I just don't think the state should be involved in dictating what the town budget should be. And so I think that, we absolutely can and should, be self-policing in our, in the property taxes that we ask voters to take on, to pay for. And I think generally we have been. I mean, my first 2 years on the council, the mill rate was flat. It went up slightly the third year. It did jump last year, but this year it went down. And and that's the municipal mill rate. It's not the, it doesn't account for the school district or the county, but, the other thing that I think it's important to point out is that for years, Gray kind of underpaid our staff relative to other towns. And so what would happen, and when I was on the school board, this happened too, we would bring in on new or younger employees, train them, and then when they got trained, they'd leave for other towns where they could get paid better. And it's important to have professional staff who know how to do their jobs, and that's what we're paying for now.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I don't know anything about LD1, but I can glean of what they're talking about. I will tell you, I understand the premise of it from what I'm hearing. I can tell you personally, I live down on Little Sebago Lake, and I know that the prices pre-pandemic, a home would sell for $300,000-$400,000 is now selling for over $1 million, and we're about to be hit pretty hard when the reval comes up, and that means there's going to be some people that are going to be paying over double what their taxes are. And I'm concerned with that. I think we're going to lose a lot of people that live in this town, that grew up in this town, that inherited land from certain individuals or whatever, that are no longer going to be able to afford to live there. So I support the idea of having a cap, but as Ann said, I think we should be able to, self-police that, but it is a huge concern for me, especially down where we're at, that certain individuals are going to, unfortunately, a lot of the land's being bought, properties being bought by out-of-staters that can afford those taxes that, quite frankly, many of us that grew up here and live here just can't.
Jim?
This is a state problem. Maine has the highest property taxes as a percentage of income than all 50 states, and it's not even close. It's like 5.2% of your income goes to property taxes, and I think the next is 4.8. I mean, there's a pretty big gap, and we got to do something about that. Maine does not have high incomes. Other states have higher property taxes, but they have higher incomes. We don't have higher incomes. So to really address that, we need to improve our incomes, because it doesn't seem like we've been very successful in lowering taxes. And so there's very little we can do at the local level other than be very conservative in what kind of government we can afford. A lot of stuff is mandated on us, both on the school side and on the municipal government side. And we've got to just, there's a lot of things out of our control, but we need to, the things that are in our control, we need to watch like a hawk. Because right now, our school, they always, you hear a lot of the news about the school budgets and so forth. And they always say how much it increases the property taxes on a 3,500, a certain price house. How about how much it increases per student? Right now, it's $18,000 per student. If you take the number of students and the current school budget that's on the table, that's $18,000 a student. We got to do better than that. We just can't afford that.
20 seconds.
And our people in Maine are getting older, and it's going to be even more acute. So we got to do something on the state level and the local level to get a government that we can afford and a school system we can afford, because we're not going in the right direction.
Thank you.
The second question that has come from Fran Monroe, and we thank her. At different town council meetings, the town manager has misled the public and town council with misinformation. Again, this is the opinion of this individual. How do you propose to fix this? And Krista, you're up first.
First of all, I would disagree with that statement. Nobody up here on the dais is ever trying to mislead anyone. We've had a lot of turnover with staff recently. We have a new town manager who just began in early February. And for a time, we were working with an interim town manager who's did a fabulous job, but his main job was our library director. And before that, we had a town manager who was here for 2 years, who had taken over for someone who was here for, over a decade. Where, there's been, like I said, a lot of turnover. I think there's been learning curves. There's a lot of historical knowledge that has left. Everybody up here is doing their best to be transparent and give the accurate information, and I would say that's true for our town managers also. If people have misunderstood content or believe otherwise, that certainly is never intentional, and we just would hope to be more transparent going forward.
Anne, your thoughts?
I'm not aware of any misinformation that's been provided, and so I do also disagree with the premise of that question. In my brief experience with our new town manager, Mike Foley, he's been very open, willing to talk to anybody. He goes over and hangs out at Lonnie Dogs and talks to people. He's really, of the 3 town managers that I've worked with, he's been the absolute best at just saying to people, come talk to me. And, he'll tell you what he thinks. He's not shy about sharing his opinion, but he's also very knowledgeable, and I do trust his judgment. So and just to sort of, we have had some staffing problems, including with our finance directors. I think we have a terrific finance director now. We have some cleanup to do, from some of the issues with the past finance directors. And I think the town's been very open about that. There's nothing, information was shared with the public about those issues. So it's regrettable. It's not what anybody wants to see. But part of also paying people a little better is helps ensure that you get higher quality people who have experience and training and can do the job that you need them to do.
Thank you very much, Anne. Mike, you're up at bat.
I don't know the specific situation, but I can say that I believe in nipping stuff in the bud. If I think that there's an issue, I think it should be addressed immediately and get to the bottom of it. I don't know enough about this to be honest with you, but I'm not a politician. I don't claim to be a politician. I love politics, but I hate them at the same time. I think that, if I feel someone is just trying to give me a politically correct answer, I probably will call them on it. And, I think there were some things that happened recently that I wasn't happy with as far as some statements that were made. And I would like to understand it a little bit better. So I think for me, if there is something, I'm going to ask questions and try to get to the bottom of it.
Thank you, Mike. James?
Well, being on the school board, I don't really look at the town, what's going on in the town council. I've got more than enough on my plate. But as to this situation, it's just kind of an ethical thing in that if somebody uses funds that were intended for one use and he uses them for something else, and he should have known that he couldn't use it for that. I'm willing to cut people slack in some cases, but if it's a reasonable person would come to the conclusion that he should have known better or she should have known better. I'm not pointing a finger on anybody in particular. That's something we can't tolerate. But this, as of this particular situation, I don't have any knowledge of it, so I really can't add anything.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question relevant. I'm changing my mind all the time. relevant to the question on, let me dig it out here, under the controlling of spending. Would each of you just briefly discuss how you establish or set your priorities for what we need to spend money on and what might be able to wait? And we're going to start with Ann on this.
You know, the council does a fair amount of listening to the staff. I mean, the staff come forward with a proposal. In my first several years on the council, we sort of gave an upper limit on any kind of increase or lack thereof. I mean, we indicated the first 2 years that we didn't want to see any increase in the mill rate. And then we just kind of listen to what proposals are brought for us. I mean, sometimes there's stuff that's continued over a period of years and keeps coming up, so it's important. It then becomes a more urgent issue, something we need to deal with. One example of that is the Pennell campus here. We had a 70-year-old, we have a 70-year-old septic system. That thing's going to blow up at any time. There are people who depend on the child care before and after school and during summer vacations and school vacations, on having New Begin available. So it really got to be quite an urgent issue. It's something we had talked about for a number of years. So that's, I mean, there's no set process. We just kind of listen to what the needs are and kind of weigh them against what everything costs and what that's going to do to the budget, and keep talking amongst ourselves and with the staff and the town manager and kind of work out those priorities from there.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I can just tell you from, being part of the road association, I have to make priorities. I have to make a decision of what we have to have, what we want to have, and some nice to haves. And I think that's what the town needs to do. There are things that we have to have. There are things that, we'd like, and then there's some, would we love to do this? Yes. So we need to come up with a budget that's reasonable, that will give us what we have to have, that will allow us to set some money aside for the future to get to where we want to be. If we want to do a certain project, that's great, that maybe we put aside so much money every year to get to that project. We don't have to fund it every year, okay? But we have to have a goal in mind of where we're going to go, where we're going to be in 5 years, where we're going to be in 10 years, how are we going to get there, what's the growth rate that's acceptable. And I just have to be honest, I don't know what's been done in the past, so I can't say this has or hasn't been done, but that's how I've done it in the past. And, you know what, we're not gonna, my dad said if I wanted something, go out and earn half of it. This town doesn't seem to do that. They seem to just say, I want, but then they don't go out and get the money to come in and do it without putting it back on the taxpayers. And I want to try to help find a way to get some of that revenue in here so we can get the things that we want. Because I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to have a great town. We want this place to look beautiful. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Hilton Head, but you go in there and it's just a beautiful town, and it doesn't look like trash. And I don't want this town to look like trash.
Krista?
Yeah, I mean, I don't go into the budget with an agenda. I don't go into the budget with an agenda, just like I didn't come to this position with one. I came here to support my community and be involved. I make a point of listening to community need, the services that we've been offering, the services that people would like to have continue in town. I also make a point of listening to staff. They're the experts here. I'm essentially a community member with a professional background, but my expertise is certainly not the type of expertise that a planner or a town manager or assessor has. So we have to listen to them and hear what they have to say. And we also have a lot of mandates from the state that we have to address frequently. So it's a balance between the wants of the community, the needs of the community, what staff is saying are most important, what the state is telling us we have to do. And then And then if there's space and room for my priorities and things that I would like to see, then I might have a conversation about how those fit in with those wants and needs that I'm hearing from others.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, I guess my priorities is I want a simpler, smaller government. For instance, I did a lot of work years ago in site development, putting in gas stations, convenience stores, subdivisions and so forth. And some towns are a lot easier to deal with than others. And I think, and I've talking to some people now that are in the position of putting in those kinds of things, they don't want to do business in Gray. It's too difficult to work with. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. The answer to that problem is not some kind of an economic development department, because that's just another layer. Now, why don't we just have simpler rules and less restrictive rules? Quit trying to manage other people's lands, zone it to own it, so to speak. That's not what this country was built on, is having a town committee telling people what they can do with their property. We've got we just need less and less government and set priorities on roads and on schools. If we're going to continue to have the government school system that's built on a socialist model that we've got, it doesn't seem to be working for us lately over the last 30 years, if you've looked at some of the studies. So maybe that's going to be something that happens, but we can't afford the direction we're going, we can't afford it. And we need to set very stark priorities coming up here in the next 10 years. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
We've had some very good questions, some very good answers. The real decision comes at this point to you, the public. Determining overall who you feel the best candidate is, or candidates, depending on the positions. I'd like to give each candidate 1 minute for their closing remarks. We'll start with Mike.
Thank you. I didn't necessarily want to run. I'm doing this because a few people asked me to run. I'd like to try it and see if I can be of an asset to the community. I'm not here to fight with anybody or create issues. I want to see this town grow. And if you elect me, I'm going to do everything I can to be an asset. Thank you.
And if you would, please.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing the work that I've done in Gray over the last 35 years. I feel like I've had a lot of experience. I'm getting better at it, and I hope. And I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of the Village Transformation Project and see that project evolve. I'm looking forward to just working on other issues that may come up as they come along, and trying to bring people together, because I know that we're stronger when we work together. And I absolutely love the process of meeting with people and hearing their ideas, because I know I sure don't have all the answers, and coming up with an answer that works best for the community. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Krista, if you would, please.
Yeah, I just want to thank the community for the opportunity to have served for the last 3 years. I hope to continue on for at least this 1-year position I'm running for. As I said a minute ago, I didn't run with an agenda. I didn't come here with like a goal of accomplishing X, Y, and Z, or any kind of political background that reflected those goals. I really am a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a resident of this town who's interested in raising her family here and having it reflect the type of environment I want for my kids and the people around me. So that's my motivation in running, and that's why I want to continue to serve in this role, in this capacity, because I think I have a voice that's reflective of a diversity of people here, and because we all have different voices, and I just would appreciate the opportunity to continue in that role.
Thank you. Jim, you've got cleanup.
Well, make it sweet, short anyway, not sweet. I want the people of Gray to prosper. We've got a wonderful community here. It's perfectly situated between the lakes and the mountains and the ocean, and we've got a good history to build upon. And I just think that we need to make sure that the people of Gray prosper, and not so much, not necessarily the town grows. Obviously the town has grown rather. When I was a young kid in the 70s, living in Old Town had 10,000 people, Gray had 2,500. Now you can almost flip them. Now Gray's got 9,000 people, and Old Town's got about 5,000. So I know how it is to not grow. Things kind of shrivel up. We don't want that.
20 seconds.
I do think we've got a good community here, and we just need to, needs to be based on freedom and fiscal sanity.
Well, before I give my closing commentary and ask Brad for his, in the short time I've been associated with municipalities, I find that policies, practices, and procedures, rules, regulations, laws, statutes are all intermixed. And the people who have passed those and passed those down to the local level sometimes don't understand the very points that you have all raised here this evening. It's a difficult thing to separate once you've put the cream in the coffee. And many times you do the best you can. But I do concur with all of you. You need to understand what the future brings so that you can plan for it and you can prosper with it. And too much of any good thing will actually lead to a very poor thing. Those are my comments. I encourage the people of this fair town to go to the election booth and cast their votes if they haven't absentee ballot already. I wish all the candidates, those who are here and those who are not, the best going forward. I think your intentions are honorable. And I thank the audience and the citizenry for all of their participation. This is the second year we've done that, and we hope that it is helpful. Brad?
Excuse me. I want to take an opportunity to thank the candidates that were able to come tonight. I have no specific or wise words of wisdom to each of you. I'll let you know how I feel at the voting booth on June 11th, which I'm sure you all will. But again, I want to thank you for your involvement in the town, which we are sorely lacking. And to see 4 people here out of 8 or 9, I know it's probably short notice, but we need people to become involved, and those candidates here tonight are some of those people that are becoming involved. Other than that, I echo Mitch. Make sure you get to the voting booth on June 11th, cast your ballots, and good luck to each one of the candidates. And thank you for being here and expressing your views and opinions.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you all. And we also want to thank the local Channel 2 for all of their participation and coordination. Guys in the booth who are really taking the time to make sure you, the public, get to see and understand some of the issues of your community. And with that, we bid you adieu.